At the foundation of agriculture, obviously, is soil, water, and the producers. Many of us work in agriculture, but we're not out here working the land, so to speak. But those that are business people. And one of the big themes that I talk a lot about here is the business of agriculture, because that's the name of this podcast, The Business of Agriculture. We're talking about the business of agriculture from the fundamental levels at the farm, and we're talking about bringing out the inner entrepreneur of a commodity producer's mindset. Damian Mason coming at you in this edition of The Business of Agriculture. Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of The Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field. Then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Hey there, welcome to the Business of Agriculture. Thanks for being here. Got a fantastic episode for you today. I got Evan Shout. He's the CFO of HGV. That is a large-scale farming operation in Saskatchewan, southeastern Saskatchewan. For those of you that are completely like the ugly Americans, no, they don't farm with snowmobiles up there. No, they don't have reindeers hitched up to their plows. It's very, very modern agriculture, and it's just across the North Dakota border. Anyway, Evan and I met last November, and he's a sharp dude. If you're listening to this and you want to know how sharp he is, watch the video on Acres TV or on my YouTube channel, the Damian Mason channel. While you're there, hit subscribe, because what I'm telling you is he's not just sharp in his mind, he's sharp in how he dresses. You've never seen a dude look as good as this on the Business of Agriculture podcast, other than me, of course. Anyway, Evan's here to talk about business, production agriculture, a theme that I have been threading out here over my episodes about the business side of production agriculture, eking out new thoughts and how to bring out your inner entrepreneur. Because you may remember from a few episodes ago, I talked to Todd Thurman about the idea that we usually think about containing costs versus increasing margins from new ways of producing what we produce or new innovations. So anyway, that's what we're going to cover and more. Evan, thanks for being here, my man.
Thank you, sir.
All right, that was a long introduction, but that's okay. You're worth it. Before we hit record, we just chatted about the fact that you work for a large-scale commodity producer. And a common theme that I've been going with, my buddy Todd Thurman, who hosts the Business of Ag Success Group with me, we said, when we think about innovation in ag, we almost always, 95% of the time, go with more efficient, make more with less, which is good for the environment, good for output. But it's always shave costs, not add revenue. Shave cost, shave cost, shave cost. And I think I want to start there, since that's a common theme with me. I call it commodity mindset. I can do it cheaper. That seems to be what we always do. You're observing it from a financial standpoint. Am I wrong?
No. And in fact, most of my producers would probably agree with you that cutting costs is their easiest way to make money. But to tell you the truth, if I was to say what's the biggest change in agriculture in the next decade, I'm going straight to mindset, which is treating the farm as a return on investment, not as a cost-cutting mechanism. So how do we make more money? Whether it's gross revenue, whether it is cost controls, it's treating the farm as you're a true entrepreneur, because as we both know, that's what farmers are. Whether they like it or not, and whether they want to be grouped in with that or not, every single one of them has either built a business or taken over a business they created. They have staff or they have family members they work with. They're entrepreneurs.
They are entrepreneurs. And I think it's, and I am in no way bashing. Obviously, anybody that's been listening to this, that's been in my audience, I'm about as pro-agriculture as you get. But I also tell agriculture things that maybe they don't, it's the old thing of tough love. We think like commodity producers. We are commodity producers, and that becomes devolves into commodity mindset. I can do it cheaper. I can do it cheaper. And example I've given before, when I had some farmer neighbors that were maybe not as forward thinking, bitching about the place down the road that had a pumpkin patch and brought children out from town and did fall time agritourism. They said, yeah, and they sell bales of straw down there, $5 a bale. Heck, I'd sell for $2. I'm like, do you realize what you just said? You're bashing somebody for selling something for more than you would sell it for. A, why would you not sell it for the same as them? And B, you're bashing for that they're trying to make money. They probably sell 9 bales of straw per year. Let's just think it's, again, commodity versus entrepreneur. The entrepreneur would say, God, if they're selling bales of straw for $5, you know what? I'm going to ramp up my straw operation. We're going to actually feed off of them, make it more of a come to this part of the world and buy your straw. It's the best straw ever. An entrepreneur thinks about how to market and upsell and brand the straw. A commodity mindset says how much cheaper I can produce the straw, and then I'll go out and screw up the market and sell it for basically my cost. Am I right?
100%. So essentially, it literally breaks down to that entrepreneurial mindset and breaks down to most of my producers that I deal with. It's literally a discussion of I'll talk in yields, I'll talk in bushels, because talking in dollars and percentages isn't what they actually want to do. So not, as you said, not to bash agriculture, but it's a concept that applies in every industry. And we've always tried to make it different in ag. We treat it like a lifestyle and not a business. And if you're doing it for the lifestyle, it makes a pretty crappy business. And if you're doing it for the business, it makes a pretty great lifestyle. And I think once they catch on to that motto, it does change a lot of farms. And I've seen it firsthand. I mean, I've seen it on our farm. It's how you treat the management side of agriculture that makes the biggest distinction between revenue and cost. It's not just growing grain. Not many farms are just grain producers anymore. Let's be serious.
So dig this. I always said, in my speeches and social media presence, it's only people get very romanticized about the lifestyle of agriculture. And as I point out, yes, I love it too. I came back here. My wife is out mowing the yard right now. We have almost 300 acres. We live in an old farmhouse. We have fixed up the barns. It's very quaint. It's very beautiful. It's neat. We sat out and drank beer last night and watched the tenant chop the third cutting of alfalfa silage. The lifestyle is there, but there's no lifestyle if there's not a business. And what you just said, I think, is neat. When I went on your website yesterday to get prepared for this, I saw it that said, if you're doing it for the lifestyle, it's a crappy business. If you're doing it, what was the thing again? Because I like it.
Yeah, if you're doing it for the lifestyle, it makes a really crappy business. If you're doing it for the business, it makes a really great lifestyle. And it does. It breaks down to that, is if you treat it like a business, and even family members, like they used to say when I worked at a public accounting firm, that if you could spend Christmas together, that was a good succession plan. Well, if the farm's not making money, I don't care if you're spending Christmas together or not. It's not a happy lifestyle. Let's be serious. So I believe the money comes first, and then the actual second part of it is the lifestyle and enjoying what you've actually done yourself, right?
Yeah, and by the way, that I love the way you just did that, because Evan, I wrote a book. In fact, it's sitting over here. I'm not going to be too gratuitous, but I will point it out. This came out 4 years ago. It's more for entrepreneurs. It's called Do Business Better. And one of the things I talked about in there was creating the life and business by choice, but always thinking about there is no lifestyle without the business. And I think that that's exactly what you were talking about right there. And so many of these ag people still like, well, I want my kids to farm. Like, well, do your kids want to farm? Nobody ever asked that question. Go to the dry cleaners in town. Go to the guy and his wife that own 3, McDonald's franchises. And is the first most motivating factor for them, what I really want to do is be able to hand these 4 McDonald's franchises over to my son. They don't say that. And I'm not being mean. And it's not that somehow that doesn't end up happening and the son or daughter doesn't end up with the 4 McDonald's franchises. But most people in ag, that's their primary motivation. And then they sometimes don't think, well, even if that's, first off, you might be imposing that onto your kid that they don't even want. Secondly, do you have a plan to get there? Are you motivated on a daily basis to set it up as a business? Because trust me, if the McDonald's franchise owner really wants their son to have these 4 McDonald's franchises, I'm betting that they have met with the attorneys and they have done the setup, and they have a much more prepared operation to go to that next generation than most farms do.
Well, and one of my mentors and actually one of my business partners right now, his line was always, I need to make enough money to send my kids to Harvard, but I need to make something cool enough that they actually want to come back and take it over. And I think that sums it up is we want to give them the option, but we need to have something in place, whether it's call it the coolness of agriculture or call it the succession plan, the transition plan, even just having enough finances in place and acres in place to have a succession plan, have it in place and give them the chance to actually be intrigued to come back and take it over.
I suppose we probably went a lot of different directions right there. If you're listening to this and you're saying, man, Damian, you're getting a little out there. Well, I met a Canadian version of me who's a little bit ADHD. So we're gonna, you know what, just take your Ritalin and come along for the ride. Okay, let's go to the first part.
Okay.
Go back to the entrepreneurial thing. And I'm not giving credit to every entrepreneur and then discrediting every farmer, but I would, again, go back to that hypothetical example, the man and his wife that have 4 McDonald's franchises, let's say. I truly believe that they would have a better succession plan in general than the average farm, because I had a guy on here about 20 episodes back that talked about 77% of all farms don't even have any succession plan, any estate plan, any will, anything. And what do those do? Well, you know what? I want to. And they go and they stand around the shop and say, well, you know what? When I'm done, go and spread me in the field. I'm like, that's not an estate plan. You bullshitting with your buddies over coffee is not anything legal.
Yeah. And to me, I mean, succession doesn't start when you realize that you're getting old and you have to have something in place. Succession starts from the moment you actually start the farm. You think big companies haven't thought about the next CEO in line or the next whatever you want to call it coming up. They're always promoting, they're always doing careers. And agriculture, we've always treated different, especially family farms. And I am all for family farms. I grew up on one, I ran one, and the farm I'm with now is a family farm. And it's just on a bigger scale, but it's literally the point where we have that plan in place. And even in our farm, we've got non-family ownership. I mean, I own a piece of Hebert Grain Ventures, and that's part of our career plan. Is I left public accounting to take on this role and on the consulting role, and now I'm an equity shareholder in a farm. So it's having those succession transition plans in place and just having the discussions, which almost never happen before something bad happens, right?
Yeah, so let's go about then what you just said right there. Let's talk about the hard decision that you're going to have to treat it like a business. Is it because, being frank here, is it because the kid always got told he's going to take over, she's going to take over when mom and dad are done? And then it was then, oh, well, all I got to know how to do is just go out and grow barley like dad and mom do, instead of a conscious decision. I'm going to learn about the business. This, after all, is a business that brings in, $1 million of sales per year, or, generates this kind of revenue, whatever. Where's it? You said you got to start thinking about it, not before you get old and are ready to be done. Well, maybe we need to think about it even before that. What are we doing to the next generation? Is that the problem? We don't instill an entrepreneurial mindset?
I'm not even sure that one even goes back to mindset. I think that one goes back to education. I mean, how many farms do you see where dad was really good at agronomy, for example? So what does son do? Well, son goes to university and gets an agronomy degree because that's what dad did, right? That's what I want to know. Well, how many businesses have 2 agronomists on staff?
Two agronomists and no sale. 2 agronomists, but no CFO like you, yeah. No sales force, and also no business manager. That's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So you wonder why communication breaks down in succession planning. Well, you got 2 guys trying to run the exact same part of the farm, and nobody else is running any of the other parts of the farm. So, succession can go. You can take it back as far as you want. I mean, I got farms that come talk to me that are 2,000-3,000 acres in Western Canada, and they want a succession plan. Well, that's not enough acres to bring your kid back without off farm income. So we needed to plan this 10 years ago and start taking on more acres so that you'd have the economies of scale in place. Like, a succession plan to me isn't just hire Joe Schmo off the street to come in and help you do succession. Succession is a business plan. And I mean, most businesses start the succession plan when they start the business.
Yeah, and by the way, if you also did read my book, Do Business Better, I actually said business plans are frankly useless. I've never had one. That doesn't mean I haven't planned out where things are going. My point is to go to the bank and say, here's exactly what things are going to look like 10 years from now. Give me a loan. That's probably what you need to do to get the loan. But trust me, there's a whole hell of a lot of stuff is going to change between now and 10 years. That business plan is going to be obsolete probably between now and the fourth quarter. but anyway, what you're talking about, though, is really big vision. Big vision means, okay, big vision meaning here's where I want this business to go. I mean, and some farms really don't have that. It's like day to day, go out and do the stuff. It's not 1 year from now, I'd like this to be at this size. 3 years from now, I'd like to be digging more into this new innovation thing. That's kind of what you're talking about, Evan.
Yeah, like I mean, we run a coaching program up here in Saskatchewan, and part of it is sitting down and actually telling us what 10 years and the success of your farm looks like. And why do we do that? Well, because farms have never actually put it down on paper. It might be in their head of what they want in 10 years, but they've never actually sat down and said, this is the goalpost. This is what we're shooting for. And if you never have that goal, how do you break it down into 3 years, 1 year? What am I doing tomorrow? Like, then what happens is every year you're just putting a crop in, taking it off, putting it in, taking it off, and you never actually have to plan the what ifs or where are we going. And no, I don't know many businesses that can run without a where are we going.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the entrepreneurial thing here in a second. Before I do, I want to ask you a question. There's probably countless apps that you have, and obviously we all use our smartphones. If you're listening to this, you're a forward-thinking agricultural professional. You have a smartphone in your hand, in your pocket, you probably use it, but are you using it as effectively as you can? My buddy Rob Syke, I reference him because he's an agricultural entrepreneur from Canada, just the next province over from where my man Evan is. He's right, Albertan, Rob is. And Rob said, you know what? Farmers spend 19% of their time trying to find solutions to problems, finding answers. All right, you want to go on Twitter and go ahead and be ridiculed by the know-it-all dumbasses on Twitter? No, why don't you get AgVisor Pro? It's an app that you put on your phone. It's very easy. Just go on and type in your app store, AgVisor Pro. It's an app that goes on your phone, and you know what? It's a collection of people like Evan, people that are out there that know how to help you get answers to stuff, and it's a community of people that actually have expertise. You can become an expert on there as well. You can even charge for your services. So you say, I am the best person in the world for getting rid of herbicide-resistant weeds. That's my expertise. Boom. Now you're an expert. AgVisor Pro. Don't take my word for it. You know what? I got a clip right here you can hear from Mr. Mackenzie Fingerhut. That's apparently somebody's real name up there in Canada, but things are different up there. Okay, take it away.
We were sitting on the fence about booking the rest of our fertilizer, but after one quick session with Mo Augustino, that really just kind of gave us the kick that we needed to finalize the rest of our booking. In a week or so, the price rallied $100, $200 a ton and subsequently saved us over $70,000.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for being here. The entrepreneurial mindset. Okay. What I think it is I started my own business almost 30 years ago. I'm in my 30th year right now. I thought every day I've got to make as much money as I can, and I've got to certainly minimize expenses because I only make so much. But I always looked at I'm going to spend money on things that make me money. And that's entrepreneurial. But then there's the thing of I always said, I've only got so much time as me. I've got to start looking at how I can make more money for each hour of me or have other things going on. That's entrepreneurialism that I'm not sure a lot of farms incorporate into their way of thinking. Take me there.
Well, I think it goes back to your first comments today on cost. Is most people believe that humans and most farms believe that humans are a cost, not an investment. Well, if you want to grow and, as you said, delegate the things that maybe somebody else is better at and focus on the things that make you money, the first part you got to start is getting a whole bunch of who's in your business. It's like we always use the term who, not how. And we do that because honestly, we wouldn't have been able to grow to where we are. And I wouldn't be working where I am if my business partner hadn't instilled that into our business. And you're going to get pushback on family farms that, third party labor, this is a family farm, we don't need it. All it does is open up time for you to essentially find your purpose. And whether your purpose is agronomy, whether your purpose is honestly going to the lake and having somebody else do the hard manual labor, that's for you to decide. But you got to start thinking about who as an investment. And as we said, not just humans, but everything, tech, all the things that are being introduced into agriculture, we always look at the cost first. We need to start looking at the return on investment first, because that's what entrepreneurs do.
Yeah, I like it. Look at ROI, not cost. And I want to throw this out there because I've been around ag people my whole life, and I'm from some ag people that were not particularly business minded, which was my motivation. It's like the kid that was raised with a certain kind of parents and said, "There's a lot of good here, but there's also things that I'm going to improve upon." Well, that was mine because they were not business minded. And I can tell you one thing that they didn't do: they didn't value their time probably at all. Yet the idea that you'd go and hire even my high school buddy who lived up the road to come and work for us, by God, we're giving that kid $4.50 an hour, and he's sitting around. They stewed over some $6 employee that wasn't like literally working every second of the day, but never once looked at their own cost. And you know what I mean? Like they refused to think that their time had value. I have definitely changed my thinking completely on that. I can stew about some person that's out here for $10 an hour, $15, whatever the number should be. I don't actually have a lot of employees and very seldom ever have had that. But I can sure as hell tell you, I look at my costs. I look at if I'm jacking around with my wife drinking beer on the pier, that's good. I want that. But I also can tell you that if I'm working, I want it to be value oriented. And so I guess help me understand that, or make sure that maybe our listeners understand that.
Well, I think it restricts and goes back to that lifestyle comment, right? Is a lot of farmers I know, they love operating equipment, for example. And so did I. I mean, that was my favorite part of the year was seeding and harvest.
Yep.
And so the person that's supposed to be running the operations, which could be anything from marketing to cash flow to any of the financial metrics, any of the HR, he sits in a cab for 14 to 16 hours a day during the busy season and doesn't have time to do any of that stuff. Well, in agriculture, we tend to hire the cheapest people and put them on the most expensive piece of machinery. I don't know any other industries that do that. Mm-hmm. If I was in construction, they're not going to pay me $5 an hour and sit me on a $3 million track hoe. Like that's not how it works. But in agriculture, we're actually looking for the cheapest people to put on the machines. So from that standpoint, most of the farms I deal with, their guys never actually sit inside a machine. They're so focused on the CEO part of the business, which is the marketing, the visionary, the relationships. Like, let's be serious. You brought up Rob Syke, you brought up a whole bunch of other professionals. Somebody needs to manage those high scale relationships. Mm-hmm. And if you're sitting in a cab, it's really difficult. So that's the ROI I see is they don't value their time enough. So they're going to sit in a cab that you could pay someone $20 an hour to. Well, I know a lot of my farms make way more than $20 an hour when you actually look at some of the profitability on farms today.
Yeah. And I think it's also important. I used to go and run grain cart for my buddy up the road for a few days every November. I knew that it wasn't making me any money, but for me, it was, I didn't listen to music. I just listened to the machine and thought. And, there is value there, Evan. I mean, that shouldn't be discounted as I guess what I'd say.
No, and I agree. Like my business partner, who's CEO, he still runs a drill for the night shift, but it's based on purpose. He wants to, like you said, he gets his best visionary time there. He gets his best thought processes, but it's his decision to run it at that time. Mm-hmm. He's not being forced to because he doesn't have the people to do it. In fact, most of our team would rather him go out and have the next opportunity and make us more money, mm-hmm. where he actually gets enjoyment out of it. So it's his farm. Right.
Yeah. And I think there's probably another side of it. I mean, I talked about doing it because it would stoke my creativity and my mind. And also it's kind of like, getting back at it. There might be another part of it for your CEO. And I would encourage everybody to do this. I had a neighbor once that did something pretty smart. He went and he ran manufacturing facilities, but one evening of the 7 days a week, he would be in either at the evening shift or the overnight shift to keep his fingers on stuff, to make sure that also the employees had buy-in. By God, I'm a night shift worker and the guy that's in charge is in here. So there are some times when you should do that. First off, it's great leadership and also it keeps your fingers on stuff and you understand a little bit of what's really happening. So I think there's that. But the flip side, or shall I say the overdose of it, is when, like you said, you're spending 16 hours a day doing the task and the business is being left twisting in the wind.
And to tell you the truth, what most of the guys I talked to today tell me is it's not as much even the respect side out there. It's the guilt side. So as entrepreneurs, it's really hard to leave your business, and any farmer will attest to this. Take a weekend off at harvest time.
Yeah.
Farmers don't do it.
No.
And part of it is they want to be there, pulse, and they enjoy it. But part of it is the guilt of they know that other individuals are running their machines, running the farm. And honestly, that doesn't change with entrepreneurs across any industry. Even myself, I don't get over the guilt of my employees working on a Saturday because they have to if I'm not there. So.
But you do work some Saturdays probably because you think it's the right thing to do.
I'm an entrepreneur. It makes me money, right? So ROI, it's a cutoff between family and work, right?
Okay, other stuff. And again, we're not bashing on anybody. We're just talking about how you can improve upon this because I think if you had more people on the production side thinking like entrepreneurs, they would probably be, frankly, happier. And you talk a lot about the mental health side of it. Entrepreneurialism is where you kind of have excitement about ideas. And I think that maybe that's something that I see some ag people that really have it, and I see some ag people that absolutely, they probably should be driving the tractor and someone else should be in charge. You know what I mean?
Have you ever had that discussion with a farmer? Is tell them that somebody else should be the one making the decisions while he sits in a machine? That's probably the hardest discussions I've ever had in my career, and they don't go well because as an owner, giving up control is probably, and we've seen it in succession. It's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Now, not saying I don't have farms that have done it and put the right person in place. On our farm, I have a COO that's not a family member. He essentially does all the HR and scheduling, even for the ownership group. So it's that trade-off of where you want to spend your time and who's doing the right task on the farm, right? Having the right person in the right seat.
Evan, I thought about this just a little bit ago here, and going back to my business book, I talked about the 5 Ps of the personality profile. I just made that up. I'm not a psychologist, but I just, of course, I just came up with, I said a long time ago that, you got 5 Ps of the business mindset. The producer, the promoter, the people person. I'm gonna have to dig my book up, but the point is most ag people absolutely get hung on production. Process would be another one. I hate process. I think it's neat when ag people talk about getting it down to 0.4 of a cent per acre that they saved on this thing and it crossed all those acres that amount. It's so tedious. It reminds me of hanging out with all the kind of nerdy engineers that went to my college who, like, on Saturday football game day, were going to the library. That's what those discussions about process remind me of. But anyway, production and process tends to be a lot of where the ag people are. But in terms of profitability or the people side or the promotion side, those are the other ones. People, promotion, meaning selling, marketing, building, and then the profitability side, the money. It seems like a lot of those ag people do not do those 3. They do production and process. Is my observation right?
100%. And I keep saying 100% because you are hitting on all the main topics. Let's be serious. I mean, on the people side, we know what the farms today are worth. If that was a business in the city beside me here, they'd have an HR manager, right? So it's part of just being in the agriculture family farm or primary producer standpoint of they just never had to have it before. And with consolidation and with where farms have, turned into in money wise, it's become a necessity. People were never discussed in agriculture until probably the last, few years when farms started getting bigger and the demographic changed and farms are aging out. So it's that side that's always been overlooked. And I mean, process wise, have a farmer sit down and do an SOP, strategic operating procedure, not a chance. Yet we probably all have them in our heads of how we did them. We've just never put them down on paper. So, I mean, we do that on the farm. We take videos of how to set a GPS machine. Why? Because if we got a new hire, a new start, the last thing I want to do is sit on a machine and have to teach them. It's a lot easier just to hand them a video or hand them a process. So it's those part of agriculture. When I say run it like a business, I don't mean be a corporate model. I don't mean the big corporation mentality. What I mean is take some of the business principles that other industries are using and apply them on the farm.
Right. Like I said, if an entrepreneur is never going to be good at all 5 things. And I talked about it in my book. I said, I'm good. I'm a promoter. I'm enough of a product guy that I understand what I sell. Right. And I want to always make it better. And I don't focus solely on production though, because I understand that the product, it can be amazing, but if it doesn't get sold, it doesn't have any value. Right. So I said, I'm probably, as far as process, I'm a C- to D on, On the people side of it, I turn it on when need be, probably like you do. You probably secretly actually are like me. You actually probably like to be sometimes by yourself. You do, don't you?
100%.
Yeah. You'd rather be with your dog. You'd rather be with your dogs than with than I'd rather. I've never been on an airplane where I thought to myself, "God, I'm so glad I'm here." I'm instead of being with my dogs. I usually think I'd rather be walking around my farm with my dogs than being on this airplane because people drive me nuts. Anyway, what about from the standpoint of the profitability? It seems like there is a real thing in agriculture that goes against good entrepreneurialism, and maybe it's ingrained in us. I want to make money. I want to make money. I have a winter home in Arizona, not too far from a whole bunch of Canadians from the prairie provinces like you. I want that. Ag people almost like you, they're afraid of being bashed on for being successful. Am I right that there seems to be almost like a purposeful avoidance of the money and the profit side of this thing?
I think they're too humble. And I'm not sure if that comes from the last few decades and the last generations, but farmers, the last thing they ever want to talk about is numbers. In fact, you go to a Coffee Row, which is kind of the meeting gossip place up here in Saskatchewan, and the numbers aren't right anyway. Nothing, I mean, don't take anything to heart. So, I mean, that's part of it. I think the lifestyle has led to this humbleness where they don't want to talk about it. The other part is branding. Not a lot of primary producers see branding or marketing or, as you said, sales as even a service line on their farm. Well, our brand is part of our strongest service line because it allows me to come out and do stuff like this with you. That's the part of the business that I actually have a focus on, is getting our name out there, because whether it's relationships, whether it's, multi discounts, whether it's big corporations, we need those networks because that actually has a bigger ROI for the farm than just production. I mean, ask me about production. I'm actually on the farm about 5 or 6 times a year at best. I have nothing to do with production. That's my team, and I trust that they're doing it to the best of their abilities. My whole focus is financial and sales.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying you're not on the farm. You are in an office right now. Again, if you're listening to this, he's in a nice looking office. And he's a CFO for, they're a 30,000 acre farming operation. They're what the people from that read the New York Times would mislabel factory farms or industrial agriculture, but they are. And we're going to see more of this, frankly. Consolidation in the ag space, which is, I believe, going to continue. USDA programs here in my country are going to still foster the less efficient or the smaller, because that tends to be where they have a fixation about, but it's not going to get between that and the real economics. Consolidation is going to continue. Am I right?
Yeah. And up in Canada, we're seeing it at a much faster scale than even I think you are down there. For us, yeah, we're 30,000 acres. I can throw a rock in Saskatchewan and hit a 30,000 acre grain farm. Like, it's consolidation up here has become the norm. And part of it's that our land prices were never at an amount that stopped guys.
Yeah.
And everybody always thought it was overpriced. I can go back a decade, and why didn't you buy more land? Well, it was overpriced.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
now it's worth 3 times as much. Well, why aren't you buying? Well, it's overpriced.
It's overpriced. Yeah. Yeah. That's been the story for a long time. Well, and Damian still kicks himself when he drives by a neighboring property and says, why didn't I buy that? Well, because I thought we were at a high. The entrepreneurial mindset, Evan, is going to be more important moving forward in an era of consolidation than it used to be. And there's somebody's going to say, no, Damian, bigger is just going to be more commodity. And it's exactly what you are, wisecracking about, saying too many of us have the commodity mindset. 30,000 acres is a commodity mindset. No, because now it's become so much of a business with so many moving parts, and opportunities usually come for diversification. You'll think, 30,000 acres means that you're just completely only this and you are commoditized down to the T. Usually, when I look around, opportunities for diversification of revenue come when there's more scale and more growth. Am I right?
Yeah, when we took on more acres, it wasn't just belt buckle farming. It wasn't because we wanted to be bigger. That was never the concept. We got to this size because we found really good people. We hired them, and then we sized the farm based on the people. So, we run a consulting division. Obviously, that's part of my job. We run a coaching division. We have venture capital investments. We're quite diversified for that reason. Is when you have the entrepreneurial mindset, you put your money where the highest return is.
Yeah.
And if it's not acres, then guess what? We'll put the money elsewhere. And that's a concept that's probably a little harder for farms to jump on, is that not reinvesting every single dollar right back into just farm growth. We're running a business here, but at the same time, it's a family farm.
Yep.
All of our people live in rural communities. We support the hometown hockey teams because guess what? That's where our HR is. And
yep.
Most of our employees were from these towns. And that's how we keep the rural atmosphere growing, because if we don't have rural towns and everything moves to urban, we're in trouble.
Yeah, right.
HR is our biggest risk on the farm right now.
Yeah, this is where you live. So about the opportunities, and a person listening to this might be getting depressed, saying, "Well, wait a minute, are we all going to have to farm 30,000 acres? Because I want to farm and I want to be small." I'm like, no, I think there's still as many good opportunities for small scale operation as there has ever been. Direct to consumer is an area that didn't even exist 10 years ago. It existed 100 years ago. People come out from town and buy their eggs or whatever, and it's coming back. But I think the entrepreneurial mindset is going to be even, I'd say, more important moving forward in an era of consolidation, because if you're the consolidating entity, you're going to have to do, like you said, you've got a coaching division, you've got 3 different things that your farming operation does, or you're going to have to be nimble and small, and that's going to require entrepreneurialism to operate in an era of consolidation.
Well, and I'm 50-50. So what I mean is the big farms, we actually have the ability to go out, try the newest tech, there's benefits. But on the small farm side, when I say consolidation, it doesn't necessarily have to be size of farm and acres. I've got a lot of small farms that are now sharing CFOs, or they're essentially going out sharing agronomists. Like, you're going to have to do some form of consolidation to remain relevant and economical in this industry. It doesn't have to be size of farm. It can be collaborations, partnerships, like that. Value add. Like there's many places that even small farms are going to prosper in the future. They just have to start having the entrepreneurial mindset to get more creative, because doing what grandpa did the last 50 years, even though it built the industry we're in today, it's not the same anymore.
Yeah, I think that, again, if you're entrepreneurial minded, you would look at what we'd call a small to mid-sized farm. And that, of course, is a different thing geographically from me to you to, South Georgia, whatever. But an entrepreneurial mind would walk onto that farm and say, you have this piece of equipment over here that is valued at $480,000, and you just told me you use it about 5 days a year. That's a terrible allocation of capital. And of course, the non-entrepreneurial minded farmers will say, yeah, but when I need it, I need it. Plus, I could depreciate it, and I made it so I didn't pay taxes the year I bought it. And you, of course, the CFO, are going to say,
I want you to pay tax, because if you're paying tax, it means you're making money. Nobody's going to like that outcome. But
and you, as the CFO, are also going to say, the entrepreneur is right. That's a tremendous tie-up of capital that could be allocated into something else that earns revenue.
Yeah, I mean, we spend 60% of our cost of production in the 16 days it takes us to put the crop in, and then the rest of the days we only spend another 45%. So it tells you that there's a lot of unallocated capital, unallocated cash.
Yeah.
I mean, a piece of equipment, you buy a brand new tractor for 16 days seeding window, and then it sits and doesn't go on a grain cart, or it doesn't do any dirt work, or there's a million ways you can get utilization out of equipment, and don't want to go down that tangent today, but it's the entrepreneurial mindset that makes you go find those ways. I mean, we needed to keep full-time labor on the farm. We haul all our own grain now. Does it make us a lot of money? No, but guess what? It allows us to keep all of our labor and not lay them off, because we might not get them back.
Yeah, and labor's obviously been an issue for the last several years. What about the people you coach? You have a coaching business, and it's geared to farmers, producers. What things do you see that they need? And I'm not going to pick on them and say, oh, they all suck at stuff. What are the greatest needs that you work with them on? Is it the financial savvy? Is it just mindset? What is it?
So we split the program up, so it's a bit entrepreneurial. I've been part of Strategic Coach out of Toronto, as it's an entrepreneur coaching myself. And we try to get some of the mindsets out of that and push it towards agriculture, because we just haven't done it that way. So part of the program is the entrepreneurial stuff we've talked about today. The other part of the program is you tell me what the biggest issue in agriculture is, whether it's HR, we've got sessions on HR, whether it's working capital, whether it's financial, we take it down where the real time is actually happening. And if you ask the producers right now, 90% of our courses are covering HR issues, because labor, I mean, the farmers are aging out. And guys can't find people to come in, and there's no careers. Like people, when they look at primary producer agriculture, they don't see it as a career with a projection. Or so when I left accounting, I came over because this farm had a projection. I could be an equity owner. I saw growth. I saw opportunity. Most farms can't offer careers that way, or don't.
Right. So do you think that they're self-aware? Do you think that if they're coming to get coaching, they obviously are ahead of the curve? The folks that are just going to hide in the shop and bitch or go to what do you call it, coffee row?
Coffee row.
They're not going to be your clients. They're not going to be your clients. So the ones that are coming are probably more self-aware and understand their weaknesses or where they need to dial it in. That's probably the fun part for you is that, I went and got a golf lesson yesterday and I said, I'm actually okay at these three things, but I suck at this. And so it's probably like that. The person comes and says, hey, I really need help on this.
And to tell you the truth, that's why we started it. So I do a lot of professional speaking, just like you do. I go across North America, and either they like what I say or they really don't hate, or they really hate what I say because that doesn't apply to our farm.
Well, what we really don't like is you damn Canadians coming down here and taking away our business. Those gigs are supposed to be for me, not for you Canadians. Plus, you probably charge Canadian money, which is like 30 cents on the dollar or something. But yes.
Oh yeah, I'm undercutting you on every fee. Trust me. But,
so anyway, when the folks come to you, the ones that need the coaching, it's probably pretty rewarding because they say, I need this. How many of them don't realize though their weakness? Like they think they're better at the finance side or whatever than they really are.
On the entrepreneurial side, I think they've all come and they're all aware. That's why they're there. On the financial side, I think what it does, it just opens eyes. So you start showing them some of, the models that we've used, and through the consulting business, I've got tons of models and tons of benchmarks. And that's probably the eye opener of, well, we thought we were really strong at this, but maybe we're not. And once we're not, well, keep going. Right. And then I'm sure that some of them go home at night and don't sleep that first night, but that's the point. The point is to get critical thought.
So speaking of critical thought, I think an entrepreneur that's good, and I believe I am one. I don't know. I haven't had a real job for 3 decades, and I quit corporate, and I've had to reinvent a number of times. One thing I talk about is the reinvention. Where do you think production agriculture is going to reinvent in the next one? And I heard you on another podcast. I listened to it, believe it or not, and you talked about the changes over the next, say, 10 years, but even go faster. Next 5 years, where is there going to be a complete need to retool? And I'm not talking about going and buying a different piece of equipment. We know farmers love to do that. What do they need to retool?
First off, financial mindset, and then call it a CPA. I'm going there first, but financial mindset, because the numbers are getting a lot bigger with interest rates where they're going, inflation. The margins are a lot tighter. I mean, obviously, wide scale drought across North America saved the commodity prices, but if they hadn't, we were already seeing commodity prices drop, especially in Canada. So, I mean, you're going to have to know your numbers better than you ever have in the past. Second off, ag tech. I mean, it's a fancy word, and obviously it's going to slow down a bit in this environment, but I am on a farm that uses a lot of technology, and it is not the same as it was 5 years ago, and it will not be the same as it is 5 years from now. Whether I believe in autonomous or not is a totally different discussion, but the data side of it, what we can get out of the machines, what the machines can do, and even the size of the machines, we're seeing that grow on an exponential rate. So the next 5 years, that's probably my biggest excitement is I don't know what's coming next at ag tech, but based on the AI and everything else we're seeing, I think it's exciting.
Yeah, I do too. And I think it's daunting. It's exciting and daunting. And then you wonder, I've never been an early adopter because I think there's a lot of money that gets spent and because it's cool or people think it's cool or tell you need it. And then it turns out you don't even really get much benefit from it. So I go more to the ROI side. I'll invest in it when I see how it can make me money, kind of a thing. But I agree with you about the money and about the ag tech and about the innovative spirit. And I think another one that you talked about earlier, if I were in production ag, I would start thinking about the utilization of technology as well as humans. I mean, we're not going to get away from humans in the next 5 years, and really thinking about, as you said, there's a cost to me, and should I be out there, on the tractor, or should I be in here at this desk running it? And then can I get good people hired? You said too many people, too many managers and owners don't view labor as an investment; they view it as an expense, I think is what you said. So
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen it throughout history in agriculture is they go to the mines that are shut down, or they go to town and they get the cheapest labor they can because it's viewed as a cost. Where I would say our labor costs are probably some of the highest in the province, just based on how we do our hiring and who we're trying to hire. But what we found is by going out and finding the most qualified for that position, it frees us up to go find other opportunities. And that's where the big ROI is. It's not in production. Like, you can only grow so much grain. Let's be serious. Yes, yields will go up and down, but we do have an economy of scale when it comes to that at this point without further research and development. We need those diversifications. We need experts so that as visionaries or as CEOs or CFOs, I can go out and find ways to make us more money in my unique ability or what I play in. So I'm obviously going to focus on the financial side is where I can find us more money. Our CEO focuses on networks, partnerships. Like, it's knowing your role and knowing how to find those opportunities.
Focuses on networks and partnerships, meaning how we can grow. And by the way, HGV stands for
Hebert Grain Ventures.
Hebert Grain Ventures, which is obviously grain production on 30,000 acres. And the other things you said that happen there are the FarmerCoach coaching, which is good. What else?
Yeah. Maverick Ag, that's our consulting side. So we do CFO services, or I and my team do CFO services for other large scale farms in Western Canada. And then we have an investment arm, which is venture capital in ag tech and local ag commodities. I mean, that's obviously high risk, but that's where we chose to diversify some of it is
using your own money, or are you even pooling others with yours?
So ours plus pooling with other farms of where do we see agriculture tech going, and do we want to be a part of the investment in it, right?
Yeah, smart. So if somebody wants to check out you and your company, where do they go?
So FarmerCoach.ca would be the coaching program, MaverickAg.ca, and then I'm on Twitter under the same monikers of Maverick Ag and FarmerCoach. And we got blogs, we got public speaking, all that stuff. So much like yourself, I don't want to self-promote, but that's our social media is probably our biggest strength.
Sure. All right. His name's Evan Shout. Give us a shout, Evan Shout. The last thing here that you want to leave us with, the last stroke of brilliance from coming from Saskatchewan. Entrepreneur, agricultural production. That's how we opened it up. Give it to me. Future.
So Bill Gates always said we always overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 10. Start thinking bigger in 10.
I like it, but I have
You hate where it came from.
I hate Bill Gates. I oppose everything. I believe he is like the evil villain in a James Bond movie. But anyway,
I like the quote.
I do too. We underestimate what we can do in 10 years. We overestimate what we can do in 1 year. And I hate that. You know what? Most quotes, you can usually go back to Abe Lincoln. I'm going to say that was not Bill Gates that said that. It had to have been Abraham Lincoln or Yogi Berra. Anyway, his name's Evan Shout. He told you how to find him. He's a good dude. He's fun to talk to. And no, they really don't farm with the snowmobiles up there. He's here to help break the whole the Canada stereotype. Anyway, till next time, I'm Damian Mason, and this is The Business of Agriculture. Well, that concludes another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. This episode was brought to you by Pattern Ag. You know, everybody in agriculture understands the importance of soil health. We also keep an eye on our soil better than we ever did through advanced soil testing. But what if there was a company that provided predictive analytics, not just checking out nutrients and all the elements that are in there, but also could tell you the degree of risk you face with disease and pest pressure? That's right, Pattern Ag can do that. They actually can tell you, hey, you're going to have a real issue here. You can proactively treat for corn rootworm or cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome before the problem actually starts costing you yield. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to find the nearest rep that can help you start doing better for your soil.